What's up, everybody? Hope you guys are doing well today on this Monday. My name is Kush, and today I want to talk to you guys about one of my favorite, if not my favorite things right now, which is Bitcoin itself. And I thought, what better place to do it than one of my favorite places in the city. So I'm currently at City Park right now, and I just thought I would sit down and talk to you guys and just kind of introduce myself and what we have planned for this channel. I kind of wanted to just be sort of educational and community oriented, where we can just share information and connect and hopefully be positive resources for each other. Hopefully you guys can bear with me. This is my first actual video of myself, and I feel like I kind of need to get some type of tripod or something to make this a little easier. But bear with me, this is the first time, hopefully not the last time you guys see my face. And my name's Kush. Like I said, I'm a finance major. I go to university right now. I'm a junior. I just turned 21 a few months ago, and I can confidently say that discovering Bitcoin has been one of the greatest accomplishments, one of the greatest discoveries, one of the greatest life-changing moments that I've had thus far in my young adult life. And today I kind of just want to break down kind of what has led me into the rabbit hole of Bitcoin, and ultimately led me to loving Bitcoin and feeling so strongly about Bitcoin. At this point in my life, I feel like I am a Bitcoin maxi, and I'm extremely proud and confident to say that, even based on the fact that I've only been in this community since roughly late 2023. So keep that in mind, guys. I know there's people that's been in crypto, been in Bitcoin for 4 or 5 years, multiple cycles, maybe even since like the earlier days, 2017, 2016, 2015, 2014, and so on. And part of why I love Bitcoin so much is because it brings people together. It's a community of different people from all over the world that kind of align with a central thesis or a thought process, and they align with the idea of the autonomy and the freedom that Bitcoin offers. And it's kind of like a mutual understanding and a mutual thing that people are able to connect and bond over together, and it's a space in which I would say, for the most part, everyone is very genuine. People want to see each other do well, and that's another thing that I really admire about the crypto space. For the most part, it's uplifting, and folks just want to see each other do well and win and succeed together. And there's no animosity or envy towards each other for the most part. Obviously there's some exception, but I would say for the most part, it is a somewhat non-toxic space, which is a very big deal. I don't really want to make this first video too long. I know I've already been chatting for about a couple minutes now, but I want to point out some of the reasons why I admire Bitcoin and the fact that I found Bitcoin in the first place. And one of the first reasons being the fact that finding out about Bitcoin essentially allowed me to go down this rabbit hole of the entire financial system and just kind of understand it from an economic standpoint more so, and how it is a hedge against inflation, and how this technology emerged during the financial crisis of 2008, or roughly a little bit after. 2008, 2009 was around the time where it was initially launched, you know, and it didn't really get too much traction until 2010. You know, Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer exchange network, you know, and it started off as somewhat of a currency where people were trying to use it as this way of exchange of value, you know. And at first people were just like, oh, let me just trade my Bitcoin for pizza or whatever the case may be, you know what I mean? Like, people are trying to trade it for whatever because they didn't understand the actual intrinsic value of Bitcoin itself, you know. You're talking about a technology that is pretty much the first digital form of digital scarcity, you know, on the internet, online, being able to access and have complete ownership of something that is digitally scarce, you know. And that brings me to one of the largest parts that I feel like that reels people in and gets people into Bitcoin is the fact that it is finite. It is completely scarce, you know what I mean? There is only 21 million or so, probably less than that, in circulation right now, and there's never going to be more, you know. You start to think about fiat currencies and how they're designed inherently to be inflationary, and you can print the US dollar, you can print the yen, you can print euros, pounds by the trillions, you know, and it loses its value each month, each year, each decade. That's just how it works, you know. So I feel like that's something that brings people in. And it's like, once you understand Bitcoin as the strongest performing asset over a decade plus, we're talking about 15 plus years being the strongest performing asset, and it really has not reached the level of adoption yet that a lot of people in the community, a lot of Bitcoin maxis believe that it should be at, you know. And some could say that's bad, some could say it's good. I look at it kind of on the bright side, where it's like, we have not seen the type of adoption that we've expected at this point of almost a 20-year lifespan, you know. And still, with that being said, we're still at $100,000 currently, you know, on this day. And $100,000, you know, chasing the all-time highs and price discovery at that point. So that's something to be noted, you know. You're looking at maybe 500 million people in the entire globe that own crypto or that own Bitcoin, you know. That's a very insignificant amount when you compare it to roughly 8 billion people on Earth. I think it comes out to something like maybe 2 to 5% of the world owns some type of crypto or owns Bitcoin. So in perspective, that's a very small number, you know what I mean? And, you know, an eye-opener has been the fact that Bitcoin is hitting these milestones. You're seeing institutional adoption, you're seeing nation states buying in, you're seeing countries starting to use it as payment for trade, all sorts of things. You see the first pro-crypto world leader in President Trump, you know. So regardless of how you feel about Trump, he was able to win over a large portion of his voters, the people that voted for him, solely based on the fact that these are people that were pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin, and aligned with his philosophies in that way. So Bitcoin is something that I feel like a lot of people have yet to discover still, and it's still in its very early stages, you know. This is a technology that is so truly powerful that it allows people across the entire globe to connect and to share value with each other, to exchange value, to be able to share their time and energy, in a sense. Because one of the big points that I want to touch on is kind of the fact that, you know, in modern society, we as people that abide by this society, we go to our jobs and We get paid on an hourly or whatever salary basis in exchange for our time and energy, you know? And that's essentially how people in these first world countries, in these developed nations, access money, you know, access monetary goods in that sense, and access fiat currency. Bitcoin, on the other hand, allows you to preserve that time and that energy that you're spending, you know, at a job or trying to work to earn paper dollars. Over time, you're talking about something that has I believe a roughly 60% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. Probably over the last 5 or 10 years, it's slowed down to around 60%. But if you think about inflation, I believe inflation in the US is like 4 to 7% a year, something like that. Regardless, if you're holding your dollars in a bank and it's not doing anything, it's not earning interest or it's not compounding in any way, your energy and your time that you're exchanging for the fiat currency is becoming devalued every single year, you know, every single day, every single month, every single time increment, increasingly, you know. So you think about pretty much just inflation over the country, or in this country over time, and something like $100 back maybe 100 years ago has essentially lost all of its value because of inflation over time, because of the money supply increasing as the main factor, you know. And unfortunately, a lot of Americans, a lot of adults still do not understand this concept, and so they thus do not really understand Bitcoin and why it's so important and why it holds value in the first place. But essentially, this is a technology that allows people all over the world, in all continents, in all countries, to be able to have access to connect and to share goods, or to share their value, to share their wealth in a matter of a second, in a snap of a finger, literally, you know, and at a cheaper rate than if you were to be trying to send $1 billion to someone across the world. You know, you can do it in Bitcoin. It might take a minute or so, a couple seconds, easy. Your fees are going to be low. You cannot transfer that much capital, that much wealth in an efficient way with any other manner. You can't do it with real estate. You can't do it with physical cash. You can't do it with artwork. You know, these are how people store their wealth. And nowadays, people are increasingly storing their wealth in Bitcoin. Sorry guys, my phone was messing up a little bit, but I don't really mean to get too off track. Like I said, I want to keep this video fairly short, around like 15 minutes or so, because I kind of want you guys to get the gist of what I'm saying and not get too distracted or uninterested so fast. But Bitcoin is truly special, you know what I mean? Like, this is something that you could have put $1 into at its inception or anywhere, you know, towards its origin, and you could essentially be a millionaire at this point, no questions asked. Now, I always bring this up to people because it's like, well, did you end up holding your Bitcoin, or did you end up selling it through this price action of being able to rise to 100K and so on? And you know, you shouldn't blame people for taking profits. That's not the point. But, you know, this is something that is literally done over 1,000,000x, 1,000,000 times. I think it's something like 1.5 plus million times since its inception in 2008. So you can put $1 in this thing, go back 2008, use your time machine, you'd be at like $1.5 million with a single dollar. This is not gambling. This is not, let me buy a lottery ticket. No, none of that. This is guaranteed, you know? And it's something that has allowed people in emerging markets and, you know, developing nations to be able to access this. And imagine you don't live in a country like the US, where we have the world's reserve currency. We have the strongest currency, you know? so we don't have to deal with inflation on the magnitude of a company like Zimbabwe in the past, for example, which dealt with hyperinflation. You know, this is a country that ended up printing $1 trillion bill. You know, that already sounds crazy just by you hearing it. You're like, oh, there's not even a trillionaire on earth right now in US dollar terms. How are they printing $1 trillion bills? Anyways, we can't do that with Bitcoin, you know? And the US does face inflation, but in other places it's a lot worse, a lot worse. And some of these folks' currency is depleting by significant amounts by the day, by the week, by the month, you know? So them being able to access a technology, an asset like Bitcoin, you know, even though it is extremely volatile, which I want to talk about, you know, along with stable coins, which is kind of like, they go together in a way, you know what I mean? These people are able to access something that is increasing in price, compounded annually by roughly 60% a year, you know? You can put your money in Bitcoin and it's safe, it's yours. You have 100% ownership. No one can reverse your transaction if you want to send money. That's another cool and very significant aspect of Bitcoin. No one can tell you what you can do with it or what you can't do with it. It's yours. You have full ownership, you know? It is truly beautiful. And kind of with the stablecoin thing, like, this is how a large influx of capital is going to enter into this crypto market. And I'm talking about trillions of dollars, you know? And some people understand that. Some people will look at me like I'm crazy when I say that. But you're talking about emerging markets that have a desire. Every single country has. I'll end on this note because I don't want to go too long with this video, you know, but I hope it serves some type of purpose and value for whoever's out there listening and watching right now. You know, I don't really care how much views this video gets. I just hope it goes to the right person and the right person sees it and it changes your life or your perspective or how you think about the economy and finance and money and yourself and the value that you hold, you know. And as you guys can tell, I'm very passionate, so I could go on talking about this stuff for hours. And I finally have reached a point where I feel comfortable talking about it and want to share my opinion because I feel like I am knowledgeable and can add value to your guys' lives, you know, with what I have to say. Anyways, back on the topic of stablecoins. Stablecoins are essentially going to inject trillions of dollars into the crypto market because countries that are emerging countries, developing nations, whatever you want to call it, they have such a strong desire for holding the US dollar. And now you tell someone that they can hold the US dollar without actually physically having to come to the US, without having to trade it using Forex, without having to work in the United States to earn dollars, none of it. And you can do it digitally too. You can own a cryptocurrency that is a stable coin that is pegged 1-to-1 to the dollar, and that is extremely significant. These people can earn 4 to 5% yields or whatever the yields, the interest that you can earn is, and that is extremely significant for someone in an emerging country where their currency may be significantly less compared to the dollar, you know. And now you have the opportunity to hold dollars in a much easier fashion, you know. And who wouldn't want to, you know? Everyone in the world wants dollars. It's that simple, you know. I think I'm gonna end on that note, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something from it. I hope you guys come back for more content. I really want to work this into my schedule where I just make videos as much as possible, provide content as much as possible. I'm gonna include my X account, maybe my TikTok as well. I post crypto related content, economics, finance related stuff like that on my X and my TikTok. So if you guys enjoy, please show some love, subscribe, leave a comment, like, engage And you guys enjoy this view, man. I'm gonna try and get some B-roll on the way out. Aside from that, you guys enjoy. Hopefully we hit all-time highs in Bitcoin this week. That's the goal, y'all. Much love. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one.